Yeah, it's definitely a broken road that got me to finance. I was working in advertising and marketing for a couple years when I was in Maryland, and I think I remember even saying like, I will never work in finance. I had an internship in finance where I was trying to get it was a marketing internship, and I wanted to share some like cool stories from the females in the company for Women's Month, and I was told no because we're not trying to get political. It's like apparently being a woman was a political statement. So I was like, I'm not going to stay in this industry. And I switched to advertising, worked for an amazing ad agency, and ended up taking a job a few years later with one of our clients. And it is 100% not what I expected for working in finance. It's not what I expected for my life. But I can't imagine anything else. I absolutely love it.
Yeah, it's really interesting because whenever I think of financial people, and I have a couple of people in the industry, so I mean this with all the love because they're friends of mine, but I think of like more rigid, I think of more like maybe suits and just like that really like white collar experience, whether they're in the financial literacy space or they're in the financial advising space or even banking, right? But when
Yeah.
I met you, you do not put off that vibe at all. So you definitely break the borders, both as a female, but then also just as the energy that you put out into the world. So I think it's really cool.
Like, yeah, I definitely am not the button down typical finance
Yeah.
person. And I think I kind of get that leeway because I am in marketing.
Yeah.
So I'm
Yeah.
on
You get
that
to be
creative
creative.
side. And I love that. I don't know when I found a passion for personal finance, but I didn't expect it. But being able to combine that with what I was passionate about, which was writing and creativity and all of that, it's definitely different. And I feel like I have a very unique kind of spot in the world right now. And
Yeah. Which
it's
I think is
awesome.
necessary. I mean, we were talking even, I remember this now so vividly. I told her when she came in, I'm like, y'all, you have to connect me. I cannot remember our connection. And then immediately all the memories flood back because it wasn't too long ago. So
It's
kiss my
not.
brain. Thank you for remembering. But we were talking about how a majority of what education my friends know about finances and even the generations ahead of me is Susan Orman or Dave
Dave
Ramsey.
Ramsey.
Yeah. And so you had this whole different perspective, which is really one of the reasons I wanted to bring you on the podcast because I knew it would rattle some people a little bit into the best case scenario, right? Like we all want more financial abundance. So talk about that kind of perspective and learning curve.
Yeah, I mean, as a company, we think that financial literacy is kind of the key to everything with financial success. And I mean, I couldn't agree with that more. It it's kind of the same. Um, like everyone says, like don't if you're just a young woman by yourself, don't go to a mechanic because they're just going to think you don't know anything and take advantage of you. The same thing can happen when you go to someone in finance if they assume like you don't know what they're talking about and you don't really understand it. There's no way of knowing if what they're feeding you is just like a sales pitch or if it's actually what you need. So having that literacy is going to help you just not get taken advantage of, and I think that's so important. So everything that I've been doing is just pushing out that information and trying to get people to understand those concepts. And like you said, with what we've learned, it's not just Dave Ramsey and Suze Orman. So much of what we learn from our parents, and we don't realize it.
For sure.
So it's those money stories that we grow up with and those money scripts. And you can be making financial decisions at 40 that you make because of something that happened when you were 10, that you don't realize that connection. But we spend so much time accidentally learning these lessons from our parents. And then we have to spend our adulthood kind of unlearning it so that we're
Completely.
able to make those better
And then
choices.
I think about like stepping into the role of being a parent. I've got two kiddos that are 7 and 8. And I became even more aware of those things as I
Mm-hmm.
started to teach them or showcase them or live a different lifestyle than what I grew up in. Even things like hiring out house cleaning or
Mm-hmm.
hiring out laundry. Like that was never something that we did. My mom was an incredible homemaker and entrepreneur simultaneous because she worked out of the home and had an incredible business. But she did everything. And so it was even this mentality of like trading money for time, right? Like how do
Mm-hmm.
we remove kind of that concept and also what is valuable versus what is not, not thinking from a scarcity mentality, but an abundance mentality.
Yeah, abundance mentality is so important. And I have a couple of friends right now that are having babies, and I'm so excited because they are going to be the most financially literate babies in the
Yes.
world. I'm like, from day one, they are going to be learning about finance.
Yes.
They will be the only toddlers on the playground bragging about their 529 college savings plans. Like, I am so
Yeah.
excited to be able to like have all of these resources that I'm just going to force on my
I mean,
friends'
it's
kids.
critical though, because even my kiddos are already learning about investment and what that looks like
Yeah.
and stock and all of that. And so they'll get in the car with my husband and then at the end of the day and be like, how much money did I make today? Right. And it's like understanding that money can even work for you when you're actually
Mhm.
doing something else was not a concept that I was ever exposed to when I was little. I felt like it was actually swiping credit cards and then
Yep.
having to work in order to pay that credit card back and then swiping the credit card and then having to work to make that credit card money back. And there was never really this real understanding of cash fluidity or not necessarily that there wasn't savings, but I just couldn't comprehend that there could be a multiplication happening without my touching it once I did the initial investment.
Yeah. I think I was 20 years old and I was interning in Florida, just staying with my sister for a couple months. And I just remember sitting on her couch and asking, how do I get a credit card?
Ah, yes.
And she had to like walk me through this like credit card application and choosing which card and all this stuff because I had no idea because no one taught me that. Like there's so much things that like they should have taught us in schools that no one did. And I just had to rely on like, okay, well, she's a full size adult at this point. She should know what she's talking about. And then I just applied for whichever one she told me to do. And now, fast forward, I still have that credit card. It works
Good
very well for
advice.
me,
Right.
but it's also like I understand so much more than I did,
Yeah.
and I just want to spread that and help other people know it. Just
Yeah.
because asking you can trust these people, but that doesn't mean that they know what they're talking about.
Right. Well, and I think that part is one of the most critical. I mean, even working with a financial advisor, I remember going into those situations and having gone through business school, like I had financial insight. I understood spreadsheets really well and kind of the premise of profit and loss and econ and all that stuff at this point in my life. And I had also was a business owner for several different businesses. And when we first stepped in with a financial advisor to actually really figure out like, where do we want to go from here as a married couple? What does it look like when we retire? All of that, as me and my husband both being entrepreneurs, it was one of those moments where we're like, we have nothing. Everything's been invested at risk into our dreams, into our vision. And we want to make sure, especially as we start to develop a family, that we're prepared and that we're not being completely illiterate when it comes to our finances. And also to know, what does everybody else have? That was one of the biggest questions. Like, what is everyone else's 401k reading at this point? This was when I was 30. And I wanted to know because I didn't have a traditional savings in that regard and everything had been poured into that. And so we did all the math, we calculated backwards and what we should have had at that point had we done the traditional whatever shoulda, coulda, woulda, right? Like the American dream style of we're going to get a career and this is what you're going to do. And I remember not really fully understanding what the advisor was saying. He's a friend of mine. We went to college together. And I'm like, Cameron, you're confusing me. Can we take it like back a couple steps? And it took him really spending dedicated time drawing on a whiteboard, really explaining to me how can this actually work for us and how are we going to make this work long run, even associated to some of the things that we're not familiar with, like the 529 plan for college or even some of the investment things that we're doing now, like what's an IRA and what is, what are these signatures that you're asking me to do when it comes to my will or when it comes to my, what's the one I'm looking for? When you are protected, like your insurance, your life insurance, whole insurance, all these words. I'm like, I don't know what any of this means. And I felt illiterate. I felt not like smart enough. And had I not had him as a friend, I would have shut my mouth the whole time and let my husband run with it. But I knew
Mhm.
it was important for me, especially as a woman, to understand at least enough that I was investing and why I was investing it.
Yeah, it's so important. Like when we have resources dedicated just to how to find a financial advisor, and like we have a whole list of interview questions that you can ask your advisor or someone that you're interviewing. But part of it is making sure that you have an advisor that's going to teach you those things and isn't just going to like. It's not an advisor's job to tell you what to do with your money. It's their job to explain what your options
Yeah.
are